everybody, because today we are diving headfirst into the world of self-driving cars. But
Yep.
not just any self-driving cars. We're talking about cars that might just outsmart us all, thanks to something called vision, large language models for autonomous driving, or VLLM-4 drive for
Yeah,
short.
too right.
You bet. And we've got some seriously cool research to dig into today, excerpts from a paper titled LLM-4 Drive, a survey of large language models for autonomous driving. And to help us break it all down, I've got our resident expert on all things AI and autonomous vehicles back with us.
Always happy to be here.
So big picture first, what exactly is VLLM-4 Drive and why should we be excited about this?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, it's about using the power of those large language models.
No.
You know, think ChatGPT, but specifically for driving,
Okay.
to get past the limits we see with the self-driving systems that we have now.
Okay, so instead of just following a set of instructions that they're given,
Right.
these cars would be able to think for themselves.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. You see, the systems that we have now are great at following those specific rules, those instructions, but
Yeah,
the real world is messy.
for sure.
A kid could chase a ball out into the street.
Yeah.
We could have a sudden downpour that makes it hard to see the lines on the road.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that can really trip up our typical autonomous vehicle.
Right, those edge cases.
Exactly.
Where it's like something that a human driver would just instinctively know how to navigate,
Right.
but it's really hard to program that into a computer.
It is really hard. But that's where LLMs come in. They have this potential to take in massive amounts of data and find those patterns, and that
Yeah.
gives these cars, the cars with these LLMs, a sense of common sense that could make them way more adaptable and safer.
So it's not just about building a car that can, stay between the lines and follow the speed limit. It's about building a car that understands the unwritten rules of the road.
Yeah, precisely. And that's what's got everyone so excited about VLM on 4 Drive. It could change everything about how we approach autonomous driving.
Okay, now that's what I call the game changer. But I gotta ask, how does this actually work? Does the LLM just take the wheel and we're just along for the ride?
Well,
It does seem like something straight out of science fiction.
it might sound like that, but the research, it's happening. This paper, this one we're looking at, it actually digs into how we can use LLMs for all kinds of driving tasks.
Yeah.
And it's not just about replacing the driver completely.
Okay, so walk us through it then.
Mhm.
What are some of the ways LLMs could really change things?
Well, let's think about perception first.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all that information a person driving is always taking in, what they see from other cars and people walking around, road signs, even those little ways people adjust how they're driving. If the weather's bad.
Yeah, it's a lot, even for someone who's been driving a long time.
For sure, for sure. So LLMs could take what our sensors already pick up, like from cameras, LiDAR, radar, all that, and understand it on a much deeper level. It'd be like a car that doesn't just see something in the way, but actually understands what that thing might do next.
So instead of slamming on the brakes when someone on a bike swerves, the LLM car would kind of predict that movement and just slow down a bit.
Exactly. There's even research in this paper about LLMs that could figure out what a pedestrian might do, and they were surprisingly accurate. And they did that just by looking at how the people were moving, even which way they were looking. That's something our current systems have a really hard time with.
Whoa, that's kind of creepy, but also really cool. So we've got cars that can see better than we can. What about making decisions? How do LLMs take all that data and actually turn the wheel or speed up?
That's where the planning and control part comes in, and this is what I think is one of those interesting parts of this whole VLM4 drive thing. You see, a lot of AI systems, they're what we call black boxes. We don't really know how they make their decisions,
Yeah, which makes people nervous to trust them, especially with driving.
for sure. But LLMs, they're different. Because they use language, they could actually explain why they're doing what they're doing. Imagine your car explaining why it's braking, for example.
So instead of just hitting the brakes, my car could be like, hey, I'm slowing down because that person looks like they're about to walk into the road.
Yep. That kind of transparency is what's going to make people trust these systems. It's not enough to just make the right decision. You got to be able to explain it. And that's a big deal if we want people to really get on board with self-driving cars.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the paper also talks about something called LLM-generated simulations. What's that all about?
Okay, now this is where things get really wild. Imagine building a whole virtual world, a fake city where you can have these self-driving cars practice and we can test them in any condition.
So like a safe space to let these LLM drivers learn without any real-world risks.
Exactly. And here's the crazy part. LLMs, They can be used to build these worlds, but they can also fill them with really complex situations. And think about crazy traffic, pedestrians doing all sorts of things, even things like sudden rain or a ball rolling into the street, all those weird things that happen in real life.
Hold on, so you're saying that next time I'm playing that driving simulator game and I'm stuck in traffic, the cars around me could be powered by LLMs learning how to drive in the real world?
That's what I'm saying. And because LLMs can come up with endless variations of these situations, way more than any person could, it makes the training process that much better.
Wow, okay, that's next level. Talk about a crash course in driving. But with all its potential, there's got to be some big challenges with the LLM-4 drive, right? There's got to be a catch.
Oh, absolutely. While the potential is huge, it's definitely not a perfect technology, and researchers are working really hard to figure out those challenges right now.
So what are the biggest things holding the LLM-4 drive back? What do we need to watch out for? What are the biggest roadblocks with VLM-4 drive? What should we be looking out for?
Well, one of the big ones is data, or really it's more about the huge amount of data that these LLMs need. And it can't just be any data, it has to be good quality data. They need to learn from data that shows them all the real-world driving conditions.
So it's not enough to just have them like driving around on a sunny day on an empty road?
No, not at all. You can't just train an LLM on perfectly sunny days and open highways.
Yeah.
It's going to freak out when it sees its first snowstorm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why a big focus for researchers right now is figuring out how to collect and organize all this data in a way that makes sure these LLMs are actually learning all the right things.
Makes sense. So data's a big one. What else?
Then there's the whole testing thing.
Mhm.
How do we make sure these systems are actually safe? Our old ways of doing things like crash tests, they aren't really going to cut it with these new AI drivers. They can learn and change faster than we ever could.
So how do you test something that's always learning?
Right. That's the question.
Hmm.
This paper talks about needing totally new ways of testing these systems, maybe by using those LLM-generated simulations we talked about. It'd be like putting these AI drivers through a million miles of driving, but in the virtual world.
Uh,
They could practice for every single thing before they ever hit the road for real.
that's pretty wild, but it also sounds incredibly complicated. Is that even possible right now?
That's the question, isn't it? It's still early days for VLM and 4 Drive, but things are moving so fast. I mean, this paper talks about new ways of designing these LLMs, making them better at making split-second decisions. And there are teams working on ways to train these models way faster, too.
So it sounds like it's not really a question of if but when we'll see this tech in our cars.
That's what it seems like. And honestly, when you think about what this could mean, safer roads, less traffic, maybe even no more car sickness, it's a future worth working towards.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. It's been awesome diving into all this with you today. VLM-4 Drive is definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on. Any last thoughts for our listeners who want to go even deeper on this?
If you're as into this as we are, definitely check out the research paper itself. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Perfect. And hey, maybe one of you listening will be the one to figure out how to make these cars even smarter and safer. Until next time, this has been The Deep Dive, taking you to the depths of the most exciting tech out there.